Okay, hi Sam, and thanks for joining me today. So Sam is from Cottsway, and what we're going to be talking a bit about today is how GIS is being used for community investment. Um, we've It's very new to Cottsway and what we've been doing, but this would be a good session just to go through some of the bits we're doing and looking to achieve. And I'm sure Sam will talk through some of those bits with you. So over to you, Sam. Do you want to introduce yourself and who Cottsway are?
Yep, I'm Sam Stronach. I'm the Community Investment Officer at Cottsway Housing. Cottsway Housing, I had to do my research because I always forget how many houses we have, but we have 5,000 properties, 10,000 customers. We're relatively a smallish to medium-sized housing association. We were formed back in 2001, so we used to be the West Oxfordshire District Council housing stock, transferred over then. And we now have properties not just in West Oxfordshire, but Gloucestershire, Wiltshire and Worcestershire. Cottsway have always had a really good sort of community development, what used to be community development team at Cottsway when we came over from the council, and that's obviously since evolved into more community investment and what we can be doing in our communities. As other people know in our role, it's not just about the bricks and mortar, it's about creating that sort of sense of community. And I think I probably don't just speak for myself, but our day is probably never the same. We're always doing different work and different activities to support our customers.
Super. And what's your actual role at Cottsway, Sam?
Yep, so I'm the Community Investment Officer. We're a part of a team of 6. We predominantly have, I think, about over 55% are over the age of 55. So we do have predominantly older people in our properties. So within our team, we have 2 welfare officers. I'm community investment, so I'm looking towards the outside of our properties and into the community, and we have a community engagement officer who's trying to get our residents to be more involved in and have a voice within the housing association. So one of us is looking out, which is me, and one sort of looking in. And yeah, so we really work well together and complement each other. But I'm just the only one that does my role. I know within larger housing associations you have bigger patches and teams and antisocial behaviour officers. We don't really have that. I work quite closely with the 5 housing officers that we have looking after all of our properties, which is quite good, and we get a real flavour of different officers and how they'd work in different patches. And we really found that using sort of GIS mapping has enabled us to create a snapshot of an area that perhaps we don't necessarily know about. We've always just worked in West Oxfordshire and this is my patch, but I don't necessarily know Gloucestershire. So it allows me just to create a bit more of a snapshot for myself and other officers working in those areas.
Okay, super. And in terms of like investment programs and stuff, what's your kind of general year to year? What in terms of how many groups do you have coming for an investment, or how much are you investing into the community?
Yeah, we have our community fund that community groups can apply for. I think we probably get around 13 to 15 of those a year. We've obviously, with COVID, we've seen more of those come up, and we adapted our offer slightly, giving out smaller sums to more people during that period of time. We've been quite fortunate at Cottsway. We've been doing that for probably about 8 years, and luckily our budget has kept going up. Cottsway really see that there's an opportunity for our customers in the community to apply for this money and use this funding. And with us creating that visual map to actually see where the money's going to go towards is really good, because we had noticed that a lot of our funding goes to our neighbourhoods in West Oxfordshire, and we really want to do some more outreach work into those areas that don't necessarily know who Cottsway are, yeah, not familiar with who we are. So it's really good to have that sort of mapped for us.
Yeah, super. And I think just for people listening, so GIS and community investment, it's probably not, community investment's probably not the first thing you think of when you think GIS in housing. You know, most organisations may have some sort of GIS implementation for asset management, and it sometimes becomes quite stagnant within those departments and doesn't really reach the wider business. But there is like a benefit to utilizing GIS across all business areas. And I think community investment and engagement is quite a big one, because one, like you were saying, Sam, about understanding different neighborhoods and requirements and where you're distributing funds and stuff, and actually having a visualization of that can really support that decision making and that whole process. What I'm going to do now is actually show you what we've set up for Cottsway. Sam might want to chip in with some ways that they've been using it. So just for a bit of background, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, Cottsway actually had the community insight product prior to this. And that was basically a mapping application like a GIS that allows you to see your stock overlaid with different open data sets. So that's a very specific product, you know, dealing with a particular need. And Cottsway were already a client of ODC's with GISMO, our GIS system that we supply, and our managed services. And what we saw there was an opportunity for them to do more with that, and not just have that data, that kind of static data of their property locations and open data, but also be able to add more to it. Like I say, I'm going to go through that now. And it is at early days. We only started this a few months ago, and it'll be just good to show you what we're actually doing. So I am going to share my screen with you now, and let's load this up. So if I load up the map, so within Cottsway's setup, they've got a general Cottsway map which has all sorts of asset data and grounds maintenance data, etc. And what we've done also is set up this Cottsway insight map, which, as I say, is bringing in all of those different open data sources. For those that don't know a lot about open data, open data is growing massively. There's more and more organisations publishing data, whether it's local authorities, health authorities, Department for Work and Pensions, etc. And a GIS really is probably the only real tool that you can utilise to actually view that data alongside your own. So, you know, you can have all that information on indices and multiple deprivation and stuff, but until you actually overlay your data along with it, that's when it can start to really paint a picture. So you can see within the application, Cottsway have got all of their property points allocated on the map where they can see where their properties are. And then they've also got all of these different layers that they can view. So things like adults with long-term illness or disability, you've got children living in low-income families, households in fuel poverty, NEETs data or not in education and employment, PIP, performance information, personal independence payment. And what we've also just recently put in there as well is some previous grant and funding data. So we've got all the open data, we've got where their properties are, but what we've put in now as well is where they've done some recent grant funds. So they can see where they're funding. These at the moment are themed based on the amount that has been funded, but this could be themed on things like the category of that grant funding. So is it education or health, etc.? And they can click on any of these and it'll give them information about it. And
I wish I'd done that sooner, actually, because I think some of those, I think from the last financial year was split. So there was some COVID related sort of family engagement projects and stuff. It would be really good to actually theme them and see what, if it's more family activities or environmental projects, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. and I guess as well as being able to then view that data alongside some of this open data. So we've not got it in at the moment, but if we start bringing in things like the indices and multiple deprivation domains, you'll be able to see, well, where have we got health deprivation, and then where are we previously been investing in health streams. So I don't know if you want to say any more, Sam, about some of the data that's on here at the minute and how you're utilising it at Cottsway.
I think one of the other sort of main objectives, I think we just sort of briefly touched on it. We kind of didn't realise we had this product because obviously other teams were already using it, and we were using Community Insight at the time. And for the purpose of me using Community Insight was to create community plans for particular neighbourhoods. And it's when I realised that we were using it for the grounds maintenance that I was like, why are we using sort of two different systems that could actually really work really well together if we just use the one system? So, for example, I was originally just looking at where we had patches of ground because I was working on a community project and they wanted to work closely with our grounds maintenance. So we were able to see where our grounds maintenance areas were and do a community garden because that's what the local neighbours wanted to do. So it was great just to see where a patch of our ground was. But obviously that's just sort of snowballed into being able to see the open data sets on particular neighbourhoods. So, for example, Chipping Norton, you can just see to the north, actually has a very, it's in the papers for being quite an affluent area, but there are pockets, especially when it comes to fuel poverty. And I think we've got not NEET, not in education, training or employment. And that does create a really good picture for us if we're doing community engagement activities in those areas, because we want to improve people's quality of life. And that's, what we're trying to do. And a lot of that just creates a bit of evidence for us about why we're doing these activities in these areas. And hopefully it will lead for everyone having a kind of a better quality of life, and we're doing activities that actually people want and are going to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you foresee, so we've started this kind of journey of starting to bring in some of your internal data into this, as well as open data sets. Apart from like your neighbourhood plan approach and stuff, how do you see this being utilised for like grant applications and stuff?
I think for grant applications, like we just said, actually having it themed. So if a grant comes into us, we would give it, it's got a topic, everything's got a topic, we can sort of slot things in. And so being able to create a visual map of how many environmental projects we're doing in a particular area, or perhaps we're giving too much money into one area for one aspect and we need to do a bit of promotion in another. Because obviously from our map you can see that a lot of our work is predominantly done in West Oxfordshire, and we need to be branching out into those outlying areas. So perhaps there is a bit of promotion work we could be doing to say, particularly to areas of sort of Gloucestershire and Cheltenham, that we do have funding available to you, and we could do a bit more of a targeted approach and just see if that generates any sort of interest, and then we can plot those on our map. And that's something that I don't think I need to come to you guys to do. I can do that myself as I go through, and then I'm able just to demonstrate to the organisation, our money that you give us is being used for all our customers and for all our areas that we work in. Really, it's just that justification, isn't it? And get more bang for your buck, I suppose, and just make sure that the money goes as far as possible. Really.
Absolutely, and I think what this also lends itself to is you can actually have this sort of application, whether it's GISMO like we've got here at Cottsway, or Esri or CAD Corp. You can have actual like customer facing maps as well, where customer groups could actually utilize this as well to see, well, where is the deprivation levels in their area, what are they, and should they be concentrating a particular project just in one little neighborhood, or could they outreach to adjoining neighborhoods and stuff to really make a bigger impact? So I think it can support not only Cottsway as an organisation, but it can also support those that are kind of those champions, tenant champions, or whoever that are trying to do more in their communities. Yeah.
Absolutely. We have a community a scrutiny panel, and if they were able to have access to it, then they're able to, they are the voice of our greater residents, so it allows them to create a bit of a picture as well. And just being able to visually see it on a map is just much more than checking through stuff on a spreadsheet or getting data through. Just having that visual is more user friendly, I think, for our customers as well, and for myself.
Absolutely, excellent. And something we've done for some other clients as well, and I'm sure we've been speaking to Cottsway about, is having other layers on here as well, like where are the community centres and schools and church halls, the sort of places that you do maybe community outreach projects, having those as layers, as well as maybe like food banks. Where are the food banks? So you start to build this really big picture of your community, what investment is there, what facilities are there already, and that just allows you in your decision making and your kind of steering for projects going forward on what avenues you take. And I think, like you said earlier, Sam, as an organisation, that budget for community investment is always growing. And I think that's across the board in housing associations, really, is that they are profit for purpose organisations, and profits that are being made from like the development arms of businesses and stuff like that is going back not just to the properties but the communities in which they have the tenant base as well. So that's great. Anything else that you want to add at all, Sam? Or
no, not really. I'm using it at the moment just to start off as a draft community plan for that Chipping Norton area, and so I'm just sort of starting out. I'm learning as well. I'm not an analyst, I like to look at maps. They're much more appealing to me than spreadsheets when I was having to get reports done for me before. So being able to visually see something and have something that's much more user friendly is definitely makes my job easier. And like I said, we don't have analysts or anyone at Cottsway. It's for staff to operate, and we've been using it quite well to start with, but we're very early days, so this is just the start of our journey and where it will take us, really.
Excellent. No, brilliant. And thanks for your time, Sam, and thanks for sharing that. And hopefully anyone that's watching from community investment teams, etc., then you've got quite a bit out of that, and I'm sure Cottsway would be happy to answer questions or anything.
Absolutely.
If they come through.
Absolutely.
Super. Well, thanks for your time, Sam.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.